What's up guys, welcome back to a new video. Today we have Yumi Monkey Boy from Team Purgatory up against the Kengan Annihilation tournament. And if I'm being 100% honest, this was definitely the hardest video for this series that I've done so far. Truly based on how little Yumi showed in his fight against Misasa in the 4th round of the Kengan vs Purgatory tournament. But yep, I'll get into everything about Yumi before the what if battles. My goal for 2020 was to reach 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube, so be a mad lad and subscribe alongside these other cool things. Now, enjoy the video. Yumigahama Hikaru, also known as the X6 Fang of Metsudo or the Traitor Fang, is currently an A-list gladiator for Purgatory and known as Monkey Boy by the fandom, so that's what I'm going to be calling him for the remainder of this video. We actually didn't get his official height and weight at the start of his match against Misasa, which was a bit of a disappointment, but he is a very large character who is kinda arrogant and highly self-centered with his, insane egos, insane self-pride, and with him kind of being stupid and easy to pretty much aggravate and shown to be very short-tempered and prone to getting absolutely outmaneuvered during fights, as shown with his fight against Misasa, which was just a one-sided stomp. But apart from that battle, his only fight we've seen, or haven't even really seen, but only fight that's mentioned in the series is how he faced Jose and defeated Jose. Based on what we saw of the fight, most likely high difficulty because his blood was everywhere and Monkey Boy actually got one of his arms broken during that fight, but was actually able to defeat Jose. And he also ended up sucker punching Koga when he was first introduced in the story. During the fight before his actual fight in the 4th round, he was actually scared by Lolong, the absolute Chad known as King from Team Purgatory, who stared down on Yumi and made him get somewhat scared. For his history and him becoming the 6th Fang Metsudo, as we know, Kanagito, the 5th Fang Metsudo, after the Kengan Annihilation tournament, he stepped down. So Katahara Metsudo ended up selecting Yumi, a rookie bodyguard at the time, to become the 6th Fang Metsudo, and he was proved himself to be very fearsome as his immediate processor, getting respect from the various people, apart from the two main bodyguards or personal bodyguards of Metsudo, who always didn't really trust the scheming monkey. But you do have to respect him with him being able to outsmart Metsudo, kinda, not really, and make his way to the 6th Fang of Metsudo and get respect from a lot of the bodyguards in that position as well, after coming out of nowhere. And also during his fight against Misasa, we found out when Yumi betrayed Metsudo, he murdered one of the bodyguards who used to work under Misasa when Misasa was a captain of the 5th squad. So he has the power to kill or the will to kill, doesn't really care. And it was kind of scheming from the get-go to betray Metsudo and join Purgatory and all that. But as we know, in his match against Misasa in the 4th round, he got absolutely stomped and will most likely never fight again in the series based on the insane injuries he got during that fight. And that's what pretty much was implied by Misasa as he was walking out, that he'll pretty much spend the rest of his life in the shadows and never be seen again. Now I'll talk about his power and abilities. With his biggest feat, which isn't really a feat at all, but his title, the X6 Fang of Metsudo. To get the title of Fang of Metsudo, it has, some overwhelming power behind it, even if he didn't really show much of that during his fight against the 8th Fang of Metsudo Misasa, where he was absolutely destroyed, like 20% difficulty, didn't really do any damage to Misasa in that battle. But prior to this fight, Himuro noted that Yumi was as powerful as Kano, the 5th Fang Metsudo, which in my opinion doesn't really hold up after seeing that fight. And we also had Segabahashi stating that Yumi is in the top class of the Purgatory Gladiators. As we know, he's in A class, which is the top class of the Purgatory Gladiators, but compared to the other A class we've seen so far and the ones that are remaining that we haven't seen fight, I'm making this video after the 4th round, so I don't even know who's fighting in the 5th round at this point, but I would consider him around mid tier, not low tier and A tier. I do think he's probably stronger than Carlos and Falcon, so I'm going to probably place him more in the middle tier of the A-class Purgatory Gladiators when I do like a big Purgatory tier list thingy on power scaling and all that once the tournament finishes and all that. His most powerful weapon or best asset seems to be his brute strength, but he does have pretty decent speed and pretty fast reflexes, with him being decently agile during his fight against Misasa, especially near the early points of the fight. But his fighting style as a whole seems to be a mix of Chiba and Kano Agito kindly, with him considering himself the human weapon, being able to copy any strange weird martial art and implement it into fight. But he doesn't really do that during the fight like Kano Agito does, where he pretty much copies his opponent and tries to best them at their own ability. He more does it in a pass and kind of weird base attacks like martial arts or techniques that are based on using weapons, such as using a spear, and he's fighting at one stage like he's using a spear when he actually doesn't have a spear, and then later on when he's using like a dual sword based fighting style, which is kind of strange. But he did use a legit fighting style known as Hama style Kenpo that involved long range kicks near the end of the fight, but that proved ineffective against Misasa. And as a whole, I would consider him more of an all-around fighter. He doesn't really excel to absolute max in like speed or strength or technique. He's more of a mix of all of them put together with his strange fighting style, the human weapon fighting style is what I'm going to be calling it throughout this video. But yep, now on to the what if battles. First up, we have our boy Rito, and keep in mind that all characters I'm using to fight Yumi will be their power in the Kengan Annihilation tournament, so no improvements that they have shown in Kengan Omega. So Rito in Kengan was kind of trash, and pretty much as a whole, all around, Yumi pretty much outmatches him in everything except for his, grip strength pretty much. And even with that, you could argue it's kind of close, especially with Rito. So I think Yumi just walks through Rito for about 20% difficulty. Up next, we have Kiryu Setuna. So a very interesting one. When it comes to raw physical strength, I think Yumi has the advantage. When it comes to speed, especially in Fallen Demon, Kiryu has the advantage. When it comes to, hacks techniques, Kiryu has the advantage for sure. But that'll be an interesting one. Yumi, as we know, Fanga Metsudo, his most, respected title that only gives him respect so far in the series. But can he take on Kiryu? From what he had shown against Misasa in the fight, he kind of got countered with characters that stayed kind of close to him too much. Kiryu does kind of fight like that, somewhat similar. So honestly, I'm going to give it to Kiryu about 90% difficulty rate in my opinion. But I do think Kiryu in a somewhat sane mode will be able to defeat Yumi. Up next, we have Rei. So Rei has that insane speed advantage over Yumi, especially in that super simp mode. But Yumi can actually tank quite a bit of shots. He can't tank like attacks from Kiryu such as the Rakshasa Palm, but Rei attacks, I think Yumi will be able to tank a lot of them, but Rei does actually attack the vitals similar to how Misasa does. So with that, I do think Rei will win. It will be pretty high difficulty. It won't be as easy as Misasa did against Yumi because it's in a Kengan stadium instead of a Purgatory stadium with the light getting closer and closer, but I do think Rei wins about 80% of difficulty. Up next, we have Kano Agito. So Kano Agito, an absolute monster. I wish Kano Agito came in and fucked up Yumi instead of Misasa, but we got Misasa destroying Yumi, but Kano Agito would have done the exact same thing, if not even more. I do think Kano Agito is still above Misasa. I'll talk about that in my next video of Misasa versus the Annihilation tournament, but I think Kano Agito walks through Yumi. Very similar, both all-round fighters, but I just think Kano Agito is just above on everything in my opinion. But yep, Kano Agito destroys Yumi about 50% difficulty. Up next, we have Takita Oma. I'm going to do peak edition Takita Oma during the Annihilation tournament. So his techniques, his Nikko style, his advance, or like overpower Yumi and all that. Yumi may be able to get a few little sneak attacks on him that Oma may not see coming really, but as a whole, Yumi can't really do much to Oma, especially based on, who Oma defeated during the tournament and the fights he had and what he had shown. I don't think Yumi has anything capable what they are capable of. So yep, Yumi gets destroyed. Oma wins like 60 to maybe 75% difficulty rate, but I'll probably argue around the 60s. Next is the big boy, Kuroki Gensai. So as we know, Kuroki Gensai bested 4 of the 5 people I just talked about, and Kuroki Gensai, as we know, the almighty beard walked through Yumi. Yumi can't even touch him. It'll be easier fight for Kuroki Gensai than what it was for Misasa, in my opinion. Yumi is just too dumb while fighting. Like, he can do like scheming outside of fighting, but while fighting, he fights kind of stupid. I think Kuroki will just walk straight through him like an absolute god. 20% difficulty, Kuroki win. Up next, we have Adam. So Adam has maybe a little bit higher raw physical power, but he could argue they're around equal with that. And based on everything else, I think Yumi has the advantage considering his, techniques. Adam as well, a kind of stupid character, probably won't be able to deal with Yumi's strange human weapon based techniques. So I do think Yumi wins like 50 to 40% difficulty. Next, we have Justice Boy Akora. So based on what Yumi had shown in his Jose fight from what we've seen and in his Misasa fight, I probably put Yumi around Justice Boy's tier, a little bit high middle of the pack, and maybe a little bit higher due to having the title Fanga Metsudo, but we'll see how it goes. In his fight against Justice Boy, very similar. I think Justice Boy has a little bit faster reflexes. Yumi did show some pretty fast reflexes in his fight against Misa, but as we know, Akora stated to have the fastest reflexes in the verse, so you know, with that statement alone, I do think he still has a little bit faster. Justice Boy can go crazy. Imagine seeing a Justice Boy torture Monkey Boy for like 5 minutes like he did to Cosmo, and Monkey Boy's, you know, just screaming, still trying to talk shit, but you know, getting absolutely destroyed. But with this fight, I think it could go either way, like 50-50. Who knows who would win with this fight? I think Yumi's techniques may cause some trouble for Justice Boy with how strange they are, and he may not be aware of how to counter weapon type techniques, but he is, you know, a police Justice Boy, so he may have training to deal with that. But yeah, this fight I think could go either way, but if I had to, you know, slightly put one above the other, I'd put Yumi slightly above, like 0.1% above Akora for their fight. Up next we have Chiba. So these two have very similar techniques. As you know, Chiba copies other people's martial arts, and so does Monkey, but Chiba tried to copy many fighters from the Annihilation tournament and then some other fighters, while Yumi's copying like random ass trashy techniques for like no real reason at all. But I do think Yumi outmatches him with every other element, speed, power, technique, and everything regarding that, so I do think Yumi wins like 40% difficulty, maybe even lower. Up next we have Galang. Remember Ashura Galang. So it comes to speed and maybe like technique, you do have to say Galang has the advantage for that. As we know, Galang has foresight. Yumi hasn't shown anything to prove that he has foresight, so with that, Galang has a pretty significant advantage. When it comes to punching power or physical strength, you could argue that Yumi is a little bit higher, and if he's able to actually grapple Galang, because as we know, at the end of the fight against Misasa, Yumi tried to actually grapple him, but that's where he failed, got his jaw broken, neck broken, and face broken after that. But if Galang wasn't ready for that and gets actually grappled, he may be in trouble, because Yumi, with wanting to do that, may prove that he's confident on the ground, but we haven't really seen that. But yeah, I do think Galang wins like 75 to 80% difficulty for that fight. Hanafuse is next, and as always, a very interesting one that I don't really like talking too much detail about, because as we know, his poison could kill any opponent. When it comes to speed, you could argue they're around equal, maybe Hanafuse slightly, but I'll say about equal. Raw strength Yumi, technique Yumi, or maybe about equal with Yumi, because Hanafuse does have pressure point knowledge and everything regarding that, but I do think Yumi wins like 40% difficulty. Up next we have Hatsumi Sen. I think Hatsumi Sen will actually walk through Yumi. He's a kiddo, counters weapons, that's what it's pretty much made for, and the human weapon using weapon style, Hatsumi will absolutely destroy him. That would be a very interesting fight to actually see Hatsumi walk through Monkey Boy and absolutely fuck him up. But yeah, I do think Hatsumi wins like 60% difficulty, truly based on how he kind of hard counters Yumi, even more so than Misa, I would argue. Up next we have Cosmo, another very interesting one. Yumi is a pretty big boy. We haven't really seen Cosmo grapple or choke out anyone at the size of Yumi. The closest one is Akora, and I do think Yumi is a little bit bigger than Akora, but the author did state his techniques would work on the likes of Julius, so I guess he would be able to maybe enter the zone and deal with Yumi. But I do think Yumi has some insane raw power, some, you know, Monkey Boy tactics to, you know, get Cosmo away and probably win against him like 90% difficulty rate. This will be a very close fight, but I do think Yumi would defeat Cosmo. Next we have the big boy, the monster, Julius Reinhold. So Julius has this insane strength, will probably, you know, grab Yumi's neck and fucking crush him, throw him against the wall like Wakasuki. He doesn't have the same durability as a Wak, could absolutely destroy him. Julius wins like 50 to 60% difficulty, may take a little bit of damage from his various strange human weapon style techniques, but still, Julius is an absolute tank, won't get booked down by that. Misa barely got hit by those and took really any damage, so yeah, Julius is an absolute monster. Canada, insane foresight, may be able to, you know, bait Monkey Boy long enough to work out a tactic to actually defeat him, but I don't think Canada really has anything in his kit to actually defeat Monkey Boy, so yeah, Yumi wins like 30 to 40% difficulty rate. Karo, fisherman dude, pretty decent strength, nothing else, no technique, no real speed showcases, can't really do anything to Yumi, gets outmatched in pretty much every category, so yeah, I do think Yumi wins like 30 to maybe even 20% difficulty rate. Up next we have Kyozan, another big boy. Sumo, very powerful, has a insane speed feat, but I do think Yumi may have a bit of a experience and technique advantage. Kyozan facing Segabahashi didn't really do too well when Segabahashi pulled out some of his wrestling moves, so I can't really see him doing too well against Yumi's human weapon techniques and how he's able to change up so much and kind of confuse Kyozan, not really know how to counter that, and doesn't really have a large variety of techniques to actually deal with something like that. So yeah, I do think Yumi wins like 60 to 70% difficulty. Next we have Kano, the extra super thick boy. So has pretty decent speed, pretty decent strength, could argue they're around the same, maybe a little bit higher than Yumi, but I'd say they're about the same. Doesn't really have much technique, can kind of get countered from getting attacked low quite a bit. I think Yumi will be able to work that out and most likely be able to deal with Kano similar to how Justice Boy did, but maybe be able to do it faster with some various human sword, spear, arrow technique, whatever he's going to pull out, and deal with Kano like 50% difficulty rate. Up next we have Kure Ryan. So when it comes to raw physical strength, in removal I think Ryan has the advantage. Also with speed, without the removal I think Yumi has the advantage. So of course Ryan will need to use the removal. This would be a very close fight in my opinion, because Ryan doesn't use any techniques during Kengan, so no techniques for him. And facing up against Yumi, who does use quite a bit of techniques, a bit of strange techniques, I think Ryan, with his vast martial art experience and how the Kure clan pretty much learned so many martial arts, will have a lot of knowledge in how they counter many of them to not take insane amount of damage, but will end up taking insane amount of damage just based on how he fights. I think this fight will be very close, but I do think Ryan will win like a 90% difficulty rate, but I do think he'll take a large amount of damage, and who knows, he might actually kill Yumi during their fight as well to get that dub. So yep, that's what I think for that. Next is Gozo. Gozo, the world's fastest flying knee, can't really do anything against Yumi, gets destroyed like 30 to 40% difficulty rate. Up next we have Mutabar. So this is another mid-range, higher mid-range character in my opinion for the Kengan Annihilation tournament. I do think Yumi is around his level, and I do think this fight could go either way in my opinion, depending how much knowledge Mutabar has of his various techniques that Yumi pulls out, will decide whether Mutabar wins, but I do think this fight could go either way, so 50-50, who knows, let me know down in the comments. Up next we have Nezu. Nezu is, trashed, gets absolutely rolled and smoked by everyone in the whole Kenganverse. Up next we have Nikado Ren, has a pretty devastating technique that almost one-shot Kiryu if it wasn't for Fallen Demon, but I do think Yumi is more tanky than Kiryu, so I do think Yumi will be able to tank that technique, and apart from that, faster speed, faster reflexes, more power, more technique skill, so yeah. And as we know, Nikado is just a regular bodyguard captain, I believe, or like a special bodyguard, whatever he is, he's no fan of Metsudo, so yeah, Nikado gets destroyed. I forgot to mention that Nikado's only part of Metsudo's army in Omega, not in Ashura. But yep, up next is Okibo, another all-around fighter who I think is actually quite equal with Yumi. Yumi may have a slight advantage due to having the strangest of his techniques, with Okibo's techniques being more generic base level stuff, no like unique, crazy, not seen before techniques like Yumi has. So with that, I think Yumi will have a slight advantage, but I do think this fight will be like 95 to 99% difficulty rate, with Yumi maybe getting that win. Up next we have Segabahashi, so the superior wrestler to Jose. As we know, Yumi defeated Jose, most likely high difficulty rate, 85 to 90% difficulty. I think Segabahashi is slightly above that, so with this fight I think it could go either way in my opinion, so 50-50. I would most likely argue Segabahashi maybe gets that win near the end, like 0.1% higher chance of winning than Yumi, but I do think this fight could go either way. Up next we have Wakasuki. Wakasuki, an absolute meaty machine, 2 blast cores, maybe even 1 Yumi would go down, but probably say 2 blast cores Yumi could probably tank. After the first one would be blood everywhere, and then after another one Yumi would most likely dead or on the brink of death, or just gone in obliterated like that. And Wakasuki way too durable and tanky for anything Yumi has to actually deal with Wakasuki, nowhere near the same amount of strength, so yeah, Wakasuki wins like 50% difficulty. Up next we have Sorpang, another mid-range fighter who I think would have a very good fight against Yumi, but Sorpang's fighting style is kinda stupid as well, not that unique and hard to counter like someone like Misasa, just in your face, going for your vitals, absolutely destroying you every second. While Sorpang's a more slow fighter, kinda crazy, pretty decent power and speed, especially with the Hammer of Burma, one of the most powerful attacks in this series, but I do think Yumi will be able to win and maybe, you know, slice him up a little bit or deal enough damage to actually defeat Sorpang, like 80% difficulty rate. Up next we have Inabar, Hairboy. Hairboy can't really do anything. His hair can, you know, lift insane amount of weight, but honestly Inabar has really nothing. One of the weaker characters in the series. Yumi wins like 30 to 40% difficulty rate. Up next we have Meguro. So Meguro, absolute crazy dude. If Yumi gets taken to the ground, he may have some issue, but as shown with he trying to take Misasa to the ground, he may be well versed in grappling on the ground or anything ground based fighting, or have like a strange technique to deal with that on the ground. But I think Meguro probably is better on the ground, so Yumi will most likely need to stay up standing straight to fight Meguro, but I do think he wins like 50 to 60% difficulty rate, and Yumi isn't scared to kill people, so he could very well kill Meguro like Mutabar did in their fight. Up next we have Robinson. Robinson, pretty decent all-round fighter as well. We still haven't seen his ultimate technique that he was going to use against Ryan because he got cut off before he could unleash it, so hopefully one day we get to see that, but I do think Yumi wins like 60% difficulty rate. Next we have the last two. So Sawada, not too strong. Yumi outmatches him in every category pretty much, so Yumi wins like 20% difficulty rate. And then the last fighter is the crazy prisoner Bando. So Bando, as we know, super hacks to the max, could very well one-shot Yumi, but I think maybe Yumi may have some techniques that could actually counter Bando, you know, a human weapon technique that may be able to deal with Bando's strangeness. But I do think this fight could go 50-50, but if I had to argue title Fang and Metsudo, I think Yumi would end up winning against Bando in my opinion. So yep, that's Yumi against the Annihilation tournament. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and your opinion on these fights. Agree with me, disagree with me, I'd love to hear what you have to say down below. If you haven't already, make sure to join the Discord and all the other good shit, and yep, that's it guys, peace.